I am joined by my dear colleague, Amit, who wasn't with us in our previous webinar, so it's very nice to have him back. He's been very busy. Amit, for people who don't know you, can you introduce yourself quickly?
Yeah, sure. Colleague of Bart's. I work with a lot of our sponsors and businesses, certainly focused around the Kubernetes space, trying to help them connect, their content to the community, have a look at insights, research, audience data, and try to support the community in getting great content and support sponsors by engaging with the community. So yeah, that's me.
Very, very good. And we're also joined by someone who I met several years ago at a different time in my life when I was running the Data on Kubernetes community. Jakub, could you introduce yourself, explain who you are, what you do, what's your connection to Data on Kubernetes? Because we're going to be looking at that a lot more closely today.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Jakub, and I work as an engineer at Red Hat. And I'm also one of the founders and maintainers of the Strumzy project. Strumzy is a cloud-native computing foundation project, which is basically all about running Apache Kafka on Kubernetes in kind of the Kubernetes native way. So yeah, that's pretty much as much about data on Kubernetes as you can get.
I agree, very much so. So I've been following the Strimzy project for quite some time and all the things that are going on there. We'll be taking a closer look at that. But like I said, we'll get to that looking at the different trends that we analyze every month, because we noticed that data on Kubernetes, which has been a trend that we've seen more than twice, I would say, in these reports, but it really came on quite strong in the last month's report from about the content from September. So I will share my screen now so we can look at this more in detail. Very good. Okay, we'll go full screen and all right. So as we explained who we are, but just for those of you who may not know about LearnCube, LearnCube is an umbrella it's a collection of different brands. You know, here live on the YouTube channel for Cube FM, but there are lots of other branches in the LearnCube universe. If you're looking for a job, we have Cube Careers. If you're looking for events, we have KubeCon just around the corner, but also different KCDs, other events that are happening in the ecosystem. You can find out about there. KubeSpoint, if you're more interested in security. Kube Architect, if you're more interested in looking at app development and architecture. So like I said, there really is something for everyone. And Cube Today is where we share all the news, and these are the things that we analyze in these reports. So what we're going to be covering, like I said, the topic analysis, taking a closer look at data on Kubernetes. Why is it that people want more content when it comes to running stateful workloads on Kubernetes? Why is the consumption of that content at a higher percentage than we see with other topics that are out there in the ecosystem, whether it's infrastructure, configuration management, which is still very popular, GitOps, etc. So we'll be taking a look at those trends and then thinking about the next steps for folks that are out there creating content, thinking about creating content, what kind of things they should keep in mind that people value when they're looking at the different options that are out there, whether they're blogs, tutorials, etc. All right, so that being said, all over to you, Emmett.
Cool, great. So yeah, I think running through some of the top categories that we've seen, and Bart, you've already alluded to it, and what a great coincidence, or not, so that we've got Jakub here in terms of talking on data on Kubernetes, because it has been a consistent performer in terms of appearing in the top categories, but I think in the last 4 weeks, it's really shot up the ranks. So I'm going to ask some more questions to Bart, yourself, and Jakub in a second on that. But just scrolling down, we've got configuration management and resource optimization, which are consistently good, strong contenders in terms of content, in terms of what the community are after. Nothing's really changed too much there from those top two in the past 4 weeks. They're still getting great amount of impressions. They're still getting great click-through rate. We'll dive into more in terms of what specifically is working within that category, in terms of the type of content a bit later, because of course not all content is treated equally. A lot of different content performs better, whether it's tool-based content or actual case studies and walkthroughs. Those things are generally a lot more optimal for certainly our community. And going down a little bit further, security seems to be fading away a little bit in terms of traction, in terms of what people are looking for, clicking on and engaging with. Might be that we're seeing every kind of 3 months a trend. other than resource optimization, configuration management, every 3 months we do see a bit of a refresh. Brands need to stop focusing on certain categories as much, but we'll see a little bit more as we scroll through. If you want to go down to the next slide, Bart, or so we're looking at data on Kubernetes a little bit in more focus this month, because it has, I think last month, someone's going to correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think it was something like 5th or 6th down the line in terms of category. So it's really, really shot up. And if we just go on to the next one, the next slide, Bart, we'll then, looking at some of the actual content that's been popular, you can see the click-through rate and the impressions has been particularly strong. And I think, Jakub, I'd love to get your opinion on this. And I'm certainly nowhere near as much of an expert as you are, as you described at the beginning of this. But why are we seeing this? Do you see any trends on your side? Is it just something that's particularly picked up recently? Have there been events focused around this more recently? Yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts.
So I'm not really able to explain why exactly did it picked up since last month. But in general, I think you can quite easily see the trend where years ago when we started at Streamzy and Kafka on Kubernetes, a lot of people were talking about how that's not cloud native, and it kind of didn't fit this idea that you run tens of small pods with just a little bit of CPU and a little bit of memory and scale it up and down. And it kind of shifted from there towards more the view that Kubernetes, it's kind of, as some say, the operating system for the cloud. And suddenly it's not that much issue that you are maybe not designed from scratch as a cloud native, because you get some other advantages. You get nice portability over different platforms and infrastructures when you run on Kubernetes, and you also get kind of the unified approach to how you run applications. And I think you can kind of see this over time, this understanding that is changing to what Kubernetes really are and how they are helping us in some aspects.
Okay,
I like that point. Yeah. No, I want to go first. No,
okay, you go.
No, but I really like that point. Is that in when Jakub and I first met several years ago, at that point there was almost this sort of philosophical debate, and also was Kubernetes designed with stateful workloads in mind, the Kelsey Hightower approach. Then in 2021, the arrival of the LCAR operator from Google in order to run Oracle. But like I said, these things definitely had a big influence. And I really like what you mentioned too there, Jakub, about is it even cloud native to do this? And so understanding, grappling with those ideas, and then taking it now, several years later, and seeing that there is a lot of practical value here, that there are good reasons to do this. And that this very much can be done in a cloud native way, talking about cloud native data management. So I like that. Emmett, I cut you off. What do you want to say?
Kind of been important because I've got no idea now. So
it's okay. Emmett just had welcomed his second child into the world, so he's
that's an easy blame. I like that. Yeah. Let's start blaming him already.
Yeah. Okay, long way to continue. Shall I go to the next slide?
Let's do that.
Okay, cool.
Cool. So next up, configuration management. I think, like we've put here, configuration management has been in the top 2 now for 2 months straight. 2 months, maybe 3 months straight. That might be now, but let's call it 2 months. So that is trending well. We don't see a drop off for this. We've said that maybe certain categories stay strong for 3 months and then start kind of dropping off, but similar case to resource optimization, configuration management seems to be a real stayer. If we go to the next slide, Bart, we should have a look at some of the content that's performing well in this. And so the best performing configuration management content for September. And Bart, maybe you can expand on this a bit more better than I can, but Helm charts, it keeps popping up, it keeps doing well, they keep performing. Why is that? Why are people, really engaging with this kind of content?
That's a great question, and I would even turn it further over to Jakub. Taking a look at this, why do you think it is that, out of these, if you look at this, as an engineer, as someone, who's living and breathing open source, Kubernetes things day in and day out, what is it about we've heard things all the way from Helm is fundamentally flawed and, it needs to be done away with or revamped. But looking at this and seeing that people really, really engage with this, why do you think that is the case? What about this? Is it the title? Is it that it's touching a particular pain point? What is it you think people are responding to?
I think it's maybe a mix of all of these things. I think Helm is a great tool, which is very easy to start with. And a lot of people, when they start using some tooling like Strimzy, they automatically go and start using Helm to install it and are looking for the Helm charts. But to be honest, in reality, Helm has a lot of these kind of things where people struggle to really know how it works and how to use it. And it causes them kind of problems here and there. Like a nice example is if you upgrade the Helm chart for quite a long time now, Helm will not upgrade your custom resource definitions in your Kubernetes cluster. But there's a lot of Helm users who kind of don't, for example, are aware of this and run into issues here and there about it. And there are kind of more of these smaller things which the users run into. And I think that maybe feeds a bit the popularity because it's easy to get started with. A lot of people get involved with Helm, start using Helm, but then they run into these things where it maybe doesn't do exactly what they expected and maybe it works a bit differently. It often has good reason. So I'm definitely don't want to say that Helm somehow has bugs or issues or doesn't do some things the right way. But there's, from my experience, a lot of users who are not aware of these different behaviors. And maybe that's one of the reasons why it kind of feeds the never-ending stories about how to do this and that with Helm.
I like that a lot. Very good. Evan, shall we keep going? Next slide.
Yeah, let's keep going next. So just a quick question. This is a question from me, really, and might be a very stupid question. So if it is, we'll edit this part out. But in terms, you mentioned I think you said to start off with, and is it because maybe is it because there's a lot of new people coming into this, and that's a great place to start before they go on elsewhere, and it shows that in terms of the actual community, it's growing and growing with more. Lots more junior people who are coming into it, looking to learn, and so why these things maybe are getting a lot of traction. Is that a good assumption, a bad assumption?
Yeah, that's kind of my feeling that might be the case, that there's a lot of new people, and when you kind of give them the choice, here's 15 different YAML files which you can work with and kind of install them manually, and then there's this single Helm install command, and obviously they go for the easiest thing without maybe necessarily fully understanding how Helm works in detail and so on.
Got it. Oh, I think that wasn't too dumb a question, so we can keep that in, Bart. So great.
Good. Well, actually, we'll start the video with that. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's keep going. Yeah, now, you did mention security already, and we've been doing these reports now, I believe, since February, and security had been coming back time and time again. We even referred to the security renaissance, or in Amit's accent, the renaissance of security, which is a very, very extravagant thing to be saying in a Kubernetes context. But in this case, we saw a decline.
Yeah, I mean, we're actually quite a massive decline as well, I think, in terms of actually, people engaging with the type of content. And it might just be that, I haven't looked into the data enough. I don't know why that might be, but it might just be that the actual type of content has become a little bit saturated and brands need to take a slightly different approach to what they're doing. Maybe it's cyclical, I don't know. But it'll be interesting to monitor, see if it comes back, see if the content changes and if there's a reason for it.
All right.
Well, we've kind of covered this part already, but I suppose summarizing, in terms of what's been really popular, we've mentioned Helm charts, we've spoken about that quite a lot. Walkthrough tutorials mentioned at the beginning, consistently engages with people really well. It might again allude to the fact that people are coming to this as more entry level and they really need some good guidance and walkthrough tutorials. That does really, really well. The click-through rate for that kind of content is much more superior than other sorts of content. And people love tool overviews at the moment, and they have done for the last few months. So that content is proving particularly popular as well.
Yeah, just to add on that, Jakub, in your case, specifically thinking about Strimzy, there are, I imagine, quite a few different resources that are out there, multiple talks that have been given in KubeCon, infographics, diagrams, blogs, GitHub repositories, a lot of different things out there. What are the things that have done the best? What are the things that that your community seems to respond most positively to when it comes to content?
I think blog posts about some specific topics, which go kind of a bit more into detail and show how to use some more advanced features, they do usually very well. And we also started doing it, we call it what's new videos. So after most releases, we try to do kind of a short video covering the new features in the release and so on, which we then publish on YouTube. I think that's doing pretty well in terms of views as well. So yeah, I think that's kind of the type of content which seems to be most popular.
Very good. Very good. All right. Next slide.
Yeah, I think the next, I mean, if you just go through the next one and the one after that, but they're just a cadence of slides.
Yep.
And there's some examples here really, and we've touched upon this already, but it's just showing how, the top performing pieces of content, as you can kind of see, and we've highlighted out there, tool overview, it's a very common trend. So, if you're creating content, or if you're struggling with any of your content strategy, looking at tool overviews would perhaps be a really good, not silver bullet, but something different to include in your content armory if you're not already doing it already. So yeah, definitely take that consideration on board.
Yeah. With that in mind as well too, Jakub, in your case, if you are going to start using a new tool, let's say, classic example, if you're getting into the GitOps space and you're faced with a choice between Argo and Flux, people are going to go out and try to do side-by-side comparisons. And we find these often, trade-offs for lots of different open source projects. But what are things that you value when looking at a tool overview? What are things that are going to catch your attention?
So when I would be reading about some tools, then I would probably kind of look for some articles or some content which is not really biased by one or the other tool, but which is kind of trying to be give a bit more overlook into the nice and bad things about the different tools. Because I know that from my work, we all probably know that from our work, that there are always things which have trade-offs, and yeah, you can't make everything perfect. You need to make decisions where you improve one thing and maybe the other thing is not that great. So kind of covering these things, it's usually something I find useful, because yeah, what's great feature for one person might actually not work for another person. So kind of highlighting these things, I think that's useful without necessarily saying that this tool is somehow bad or broken by doing things differently or doing something slightly else.
Great points there. And interestingly enough, someone else from the Czech Republic did one of the most popular CubeFM episodes that we've had, talking about comparing GitOps tools, Argo CD versus Flux CD. And his name's Andre, and it was a really good presentation because precisely what you said. It's not like it's from a vendor that's trying to just focus on the negative things. It's really looking at things on balance and keeping those different use cases in mind, that those factors will also have a role to play there too. Good. Let's keep moving on the slides.
Cool. No, I think very quickly on this slide, Jakub, you nailed it there, because a lot of what does work well is also personal opinion pieces. So it's not just something that's coming from brand, but okay, fine, you're looking at tool-based content, but actually you're giving your personal rendition of how it because nothing ever really goes completely smoothly. You're looking for someone's personal opinion of what went well, what didn't go as well, where did they struggle, and just a completely fair and neutral point on whatever it is they're dealing with. So personal experience pieces, perhaps as a cross category across some of these, or what is it, the method of delivery, I suppose, as a personal experience piece rather than something brand related, might be really strong in terms of resonating with the community. Yeah, I think next one, key trends and insights, and I think that's over to you, Bart.
Okay. So in terms of what we've been talking about in this webinar, the data on Kubernetes, it's been a trend that's coming back and forth. We've seen also as well too the volume of content around data on Kubernetes. It's not that thousands of people are out there writing about it, but it's when people do speak about it, whether it's about running different databases on Kubernetes, the issues around storage, also around the different operators that are out there and which one is best to use. These are things that we see a significant amount of demand in terms of what people are responding to. And then, as we mentioned, people really do like looking at tools. This is why in our CubeFM podcast episodes, the very first question that we ask every single guest over the 7 seasons that we've done is about which 3 Kubernetes tools the person we're interviewing that they're keeping an eye on. So, and then it's a way for our audience to understand what tools these people find interesting, what they're finding, attractive about them. As Jakub mentioned as well, depending on their, the specifics, the challenges that they're facing, which one's going to work best. These are things that they're going to be keeping in mind. And then, as we also mentioned, the personal experience pieces. If someone is going to take the time to write a blog, to create a tutorial, and that they're not even being paid to do it, that it's really out of the goodness of their own heart, because they say, this is my experience with my home lab or working on a personal project, and I want to share this with folks that are out there. And obviously, generally the more specific the better, because the sort of 101 or intro to things, those things are more readily available. But hearing about, I had this problem, this is how I fixed it, this is how I did it. That honest, real world, non-branded content, I think people respond to very well. I understand for organizations, they're itching to let people know about their commercial offering or their enterprise level signups that might be available. But we've seen this time and time again through our audience. People really do respond well to the technical stuff, so keep it as technical as possible. Put things in the language of the users that you're trying to interact with, and don't go overboard on speaking badly about competitors, because like we said, there are always going to be trade-offs. We did see that configuration management still in there as an important competitor, but like I said, data on Kubernetes has appeared more than twice in these reports, so it's interesting to see that it's back again, and I don't imagine it's going to be going away anytime soon. As Amit said, thinking about the security side, yeah, we have seen this appear in the reports multiple times. We've also seen sometimes, not just with security, but other topics like where it might overlap with something else. Like remember we saw that security and GitOps coming together, that had a strong representation in content consumption. But in this particular report, it wasn't at the top as it's been in other cases. So like I said, for folks that are out there interested in creating data on Kubernetes content, you're in a good place. You can scan the things that are out there. I'm thinking about the challenges that people are facing when it comes to day 2 operations. These debates, like Jakub mentioned at the beginning, is running stateful workloads, is that even cloud native? Should it be done? Was Kubernetes designed with these workloads in mind, considering the emphasis that a lot of people think about Kubernetes being designed for stateless workloads? But now we're seeing more machine learning and AI workloads making their way onto Kubernetes. And 10 years ago when Kubernetes was, over 10 years ago when it was released, maybe those things weren't really taken into consideration either. Before we finish up though, Jakub, as someone who's very active in the ecosystem, what kind of content would you like to see more? Would you, what kind of content do you think is missing? Is it something, would you like to comment on the AI space? Because we hear a lot about AI buzz, but maybe not so much about actual practitioners coming forward and saying, yes, we've used Kubeflow in my organization. Is there anything AI related going on in the Strimsy world? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know, to be honest. The whole data on Kubernetes piece is obviously important for AI, because AI is nothing without data to train on, to build on, but also to kind of process, right? But there's not that much direct involvement of Strimsy in AI per se. It's a bit more kind of playing with things such as some MCP servers and so on to kind of control and better manage Strimsy through AIs and LLMs, but there's not that much direct involvement. You are right that sometimes maybe there's too much AI content in general, but I guess yeah, it will stay with us for the future in one way or another. So it doesn't mean that all AI content is necessarily bad.
Fair points. Good stuff. And like I said, other things that we see here too, prioritizing personal experience, like the tool overviews. These are things that people are going to continue to be interested in. And of course, we saw that a few months ago there was a lot of interest in content around events. As we get close to KubeCon, there will be a lot of content about KubeCon, but trying to think about something that makes it more original, that shares a story, a personal experience. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff at KubeCon. We have a lot of really exciting things planned. Going to be doing quizzes at booths for the first time, which is going to be super fun. But I think really the question is out there for organizations with so much noise going on. What is the story that you're going to share that people are going to care about? Is it that you have a new maintainer from a different country, you have a release, you have an update? What is it that's going to make people interested in? And then in terms of the platform, LinkedIn still by far, leading champion. Still have quite a few people that are using X, and then Telegram further down from that. With all the channels that we mentioned initially in the LearnCube network, we're in all these places and more, as well as Blue Sky, and plenty of other places where you can find us, talking about all the things going on in the Kubernetes ecosystem. We will see if we do one of these next month in November after the KubeCon hangover. I imagine we'll be back though, because we'll be talking about the trends that were featured in October. I would like to thank Jakub for joining us today and sharing his knowledge and experience working on the Strimzy project. If you want to know more about that, we'll definitely link that in the description on YouTube, as well as when we post this on our different socials. Amit, anything you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, I think that's about it, really. I think, looking forward to KubeCon. I think there's a lot of work that brands are doing towards that. Hopefully we'll be back after KubeCon. Not sure how many people will be watching, because of course the KubeCon hangover, and I think people will be very busy looking towards to wrap up the end of the year, but we'll hopefully see you then.
Jakub, anything you'd like to share before we wrap up? Things that are next for you or the Strimzy project?
Well, I will be at KubeCon as well, so see you in Atlanta.
Very good.
Excellent. Looking forward to it. Thanks so much for joining us.